veteran wingwoman, a vet dem, and the founder of the Me Too movement. This is Prejean.
Good afternoon, everybody. How is everybody doing this afternoon on Sunday? Excited about flipping the 49th?
Yeah!
Really quick, I would like to thank the veterans who are in the room. So if you have served in any branch of the military, please stand up.
These two have served.
Sorry for the quick interruption. Just a procedural formality, the club has to approve the agenda before we can continue, since this is an official club meeting.
I move approval. Second.
All opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Thank you.
Okay, welcome again to the Veterans Democratic Club of San Diego's 49th Congressional Debate. I'm Prejean, a proud Air Force veteran, and I'll be moderating today's debate. I will briefly explain to you all the rules of the debate, and then we will begin. So each candidate will have 3 minutes to give their introduction and their conclusion. Each will have 2 minutes to respond, and they have 60 seconds for rebuttal if somebody does mention their name, if a different candidate mentions their name. And prior to beginning, each candidate chose out of a hat their order of giving the introduction and the conclusion. Candidates have also chosen out of a hat which candidate will start off the debate, and the following questions will be answered by the person to their left and to your right. Our timekeeper, please, thank you. Our timekeeper will give each candidate a warning time of 30 seconds and a time of when to stop. Okay, thank you, Eric. And we are going to start with our introductions and begin. Candidate 1 out of the hat was Sarah Jacobs, and she's going to begin.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Sarah Jacobs, and thank you all for being here with us this Sunday afternoon. Thank you to the board of the club for putting this on, and Christina for moderating. Like many women around the country, I never thought I'd be running for office. But our country is in a defining moment. We have an unfair and unequal system that's giving access to opportunity to some while leaving so many others behind. And we see it here in the 49th district. Our military is the best trained, best equipped fighting force the world has ever seen. And yet, despite spending more than the next 8 countries combined, we have 32,000 military families here in San Diego County alone who have to visit the food bank every month just to get by. So it's pretty clear that our system is broken. But the good news is that we can fix it, and that starts by changing the face of power in this country. Look, I know I don't look like most of the people that we send to Congress, but that's a good thing, because if we could solve the problems we're facing with the same people that we've been sending, they would have been solved already. We need someone in Congress who understands and has worked in foreign policy. We need someone who knows that they're not going to send our troops into harm's way unnecessarily. I worked at the State Department in the Obama administration. I worked in peacekeeping at the United Nations. I was the CEO of an international education nonprofit and a foreign policy advisor to Hillary Clinton during the 2016 presidential campaign. Now, any of us from the 49th district are going to be freshman members of Congress. But I have the know-how, the policy experience, and the connections to make sure that the veterans and military families in our district get the federal funding that they deserve, that we can finally end military sexual assault, make sure that we're reforming the VA and that everyone has access to veterans health care services, make sure that we're getting to functional zero on veterans homelessness. So again, my name is Sarah Jacobs, and I would be really honored to have your support. Thank you so much.
We have Doug Applegate.
Good afternoon. Good to see so many friends. Good to see so many veterans. We left out somebody on the please stand. I'm not going to ask you to stand, but it's always very important that dependents and family members of service members are acknowledged. So I want to say that the Navy Marine Corps team and the Army and the Air Force recognizes how important families are to people who go on combat deployments. And you don't get enough recognition, but you get every bit of the aftermath of war. And I want you to know that that would be foremost in anything I would do relating to veterans up on the Hill, because it's been that way for the last 4 decades for me. So Abraham Lincoln said in his second inaugural address, to bind their wounds and to care for their widow and orphan. And just like when we always say injustice for all, there's usually somebody says someday. The veterans are still waiting for someday for that promise made by Lincoln, because we have fallen short as a country with respect to our veterans. Name the war, whether or not it was World War II and the Greatest Generation. My father came home one day just after he got laid off from GM to get a letter that I still have when I was in the 1st grade that said, "Dear Mr. Applegate, we can no longer find any documentation of your wounds suffered during December 1944 in the Ardennes, and so the VA was always mentioned with an expletive deleted in my household growing up." But there's 2 things I want to talk about today. How we make our veterans and what we do when they come home. That's what's important to this discussion here today. It's not a debate, it's formal. I'm not going to turn it into a debate, but I've got a lot of bones to pick with how our government has treated our military service for my entire lifetime. I became a Marine in '74. Still a Marine, as General Brahms up here says. You don't stop, particularly in this district and particularly in this room, the Pendleton room, that this is a unique district here. We always ask in all of our polling, are you military, active duty, veteran, or do you live with active or a veteran? 64% on all of our pollings that I've done for 3 years answered yes. It is by far the largest demographic in the 49. That's what makes this unique. That's why I truly believe that there's going to be a Marine sitting in Congress to represent you after the 2018 election. And I'm happy to answer all of your questions here today and afterwards right up until the election day on the 5th of June. Thank you very much.
Next we have Paul Kerr.
Folks, I was born in Baltimore and I was raised in a small town in Arizona. It was a predominantly Mexican-American and migrant farming town. In fact, the first job I ever got when I was 12 years old was picking onions for migrant farm workers. Fast forward about 20 years, and I'm the oldest 6. One of my brothers marries a beautiful Latina woman, and they have 2 boys, 2 amazing Latino boys. Fast forward about another 20 years, and we have this guy come down this gold escalator and announces he's going to run for president. And then he proceeds to say that all the Mexicans that come across the border are rapists, murderers, drug dealers, and felons. I snapped. I'm assuming many of you did too. Now, I never thought in a month of Sundays that this clown would get it. But when he did, I decided I needed to step up. So when I was 16, my mom was diagnosed with a disease called ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. And very shortly thereafter, the financial pressures started. Okay, I'd come home from basketball practice. My mom would be crying. She'd be talking to some bill collector. I remember coming home one day and had a couple hours, and I made myself a quick bowl of cereal. And I bit into the cereal and I almost spit it out. It was rancid. And I turned to my mom and I said, "What is this?" And she started to cry again, because we had just reached that point where we couldn't afford milk. We were on powdered milk. I was 16 and a half. When I turned 17, I decided to join the Navy. It was after my junior year of high school. Now, I needed my parents' permission. This is 1972. There's a lot of gray hair here. You all remember every night on the news, the number of North Vietnamese being killed, the number of Americans being killed that day. My mom didn't want any part of sending me in the military. She didn't want any part of it. She was sure I'd go to basic training, I'd go to Vietnam, I'd be killed. And and they kept talking about riverboats for some reason. So I finally convinced her that the only way I was going to ever get to college was a GI Bill. She finally signed. Again, I joined in 1972. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran. I didn't get over to Vietnam until October of 1973. They signed the Paris Peace Agreements in early '73. I served for 3 proud years, but when I got out, folks, I struggled like our veterans are struggling today. We have over 40,000 men and women who were homeless last night. Over 22, if the averages hold, will commit suicide today. Our veterans deserve better. I've gone down that rabbit hole when I got out of the service. I have significant ideas about what causes it and what we need to do to fix it, and I very much look forward to the conversation today. My name is Paul Kerr. Thank you.
Next, we have Mike Levin.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to the Veterans Democratic Club for hosting this great forum. I respect and appreciate all of you here who have served, including you, Doug, and you, Paul. Thank you all for everything that you do. You know, I think that our country is at a crossroads right now, and we have to make a decision collectively as the United States. The decision is pretty clear. Are we going to validate the poor judgment of this president and the Congress that enables his every move, which includes the VA? Or are we going to take a different path, and are we going to remember the values that made this country strong in the first place? The values that my grandparents and my parents taught me. My grandfather was a veteran in the Army Air Corps. He taught me what service was all about. He taught me what patriotism was all about. And he believed that in this country we had to respect and appreciate one another regardless of our country of origin, regardless of our religion, regardless of our gender identity. He passed away a few years ago. He is with me every single day on this journey. His last name, Levin, he could not use in small business because of the anti-Semitism that existed in the 1950s in Los Angeles. So he went by the name Dean in his small business. And I never felt it was right that somebody who had just fought and served and seen the devastation of war couldn't even use their own last name. So when I go out and I see my name, his name, Levin, on a sign, a banner, a button, I hope in a lot of your neighborhoods, on lawn signs in your neighborhoods, don't think of me. Think of my grandfather and the sacrifices that he made and the sacrifices that my grandmother made. On the other side of the family, you probably would not guess, but my grandparents came from Mexico. They came and they worked their tails off. My grandma was only 3 years old. My grandfather was 11. They had 5 girls, including my mom. All 5 of the girls went to college. 3 of them got advanced degrees, including my mom. They taught me that you have to be bold, you have to do what you're passionate about, you have to do what you believe in. That's why I've been a dedicated Democratic activist my entire adult life. And I am incredibly proud of the campaign that we've run. I'm one of the only candidates in the entire country to have been endorsed by the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and Democracy for America. 3 incredibly great progressive organizations that know if we're going to flip this district, we've got to do so with a campaign that is organized and diligent and dedicated and leaves no stone unturned. And what is stunning to me as I go and I walk across this district is we have an election in about 58 days. And the ballots will be in people's mailboxes in about a month. And you would be amazed at how many people do not know that there's an election on June 5th. It is truly scary. So what I encourage every single person in this room to do, regardless of who you support up here on stage, hopefully you support one of us up here on stage, but regardless of who you support, make sure not only that you vote, but that you tell your friends to vote, your neighbors to vote. Everybody go find one young person and get them to vote. Because the only thing that can defeat us is if the progressive base and the Democratic base does not turn out. We've got to get out there. Thank you all so much for having me.
All right, this is Erin Tracy, Costa del Sol.
Thank you.
And
now we are
that was the opening statements from our 4 Democratic candidates.